Thank you again for joining me on the Sutherland Report and giving me the privilege of your company. Now, I know other people say when they say they are very excited about their guest that's coming on. I am very excited about the guest that's coming on because one of the wonderful things about the internet is that we can reach out thousands and thousands of miles away to other countries and bring on incredible guests. So I'm just going to welcome John Haller of Fellowship Bible Chapel, Columbus, Ohio, a name to a number of people that you will be very familiar with. John, thank you for joining me here in the UK. Thank you for coming via America. It's lovely to meet you by the digital medium. So thank you very much for your time.
Good to see you again. I remember seeing you many years ago. It seems like
we have met. We have met. I think we met. You're quite right. We met at Mike Spalding's Go Therefore conference. I think 2018. It could be
18 or 19. I can't quite remember which one, but.
Well, thank you, John. As we just said off camera, off record, there's a few things going on in the world, and first of all, of course, in the States. And you've had the eclipse, you've had all that lunar activity, which is quite impressive. We may come back to that, but I think
we actually were in the path of totality. So it's sort of like, I'm 70 years old, so it's a once in a lifetime experience to actually have your house in the middle of that.
Right. So when you say in totality, what do you mean? As in you're bang in the middle of that, or is it the danger?
No, we were the path of totality. It was a couple hundred miles wide where you would get 100% eclipse. And so we lived near the edge of that. So we had about 3 minutes of a total eclipse. It's really I don't know if you've ever experienced it personally, but it's quite stunning. Even up in Lime, Ohio, they had about 4.5 minutes. They were more towards the center of the path of totality. So that was, I found out I had more neighbors living around me than I thought because everybody was out. And when it went completely total, it gets dark and there was a audible reaction of everybody to it. Like, wow. Man. I mean, it's an awesome thing. So I think we have one coming up in 2095 or something like that, but probably I'm not going to be around I've said I won't be around in this particular form when that happens.
I hear you. When you say that, when you put a date like that out of 2095, and then you've just been through this incredible experience, I haven't experienced that. And of course, we've got the Aurora Borealis and all that activity that's been going on around the world, and that's not, and that has been over here. It just shows you, they are incredible things that happen.
We actually had the Aurora, the Northern Lights here. We've never seen them before. So, I mean, in 1 year, we have a total eclipse, Northern Lights. And, so you can understand, I think, a little bit more about earlier periods of history when people saw these things and were like, and they figured it out. I mean, there's somebody figured out that saw some Aztec or something down in Mexico where they found it was like a calculator for eclipses, and they were able to figure out when the eclipse was going to take place this year using that. It's like 2,000 some years old. So it's just interesting that I don't know. It's an amazing thing to see. I'll never forget it. Of course, I don't have that much longer to live, probably, but is statistically, but it's an amazing thing to watch.
What time in the afternoon did it go dark? When you're talking about you're out there with your neighbors and everyone's gasping, going, wow, which is incredible. Can you remember what time in the afternoon that would have been?
I had it on my calendar. I believe it was around 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So it's bright sunlight. and it gets a little bit darker you have to use like special glasses and stuff to look at it until it's total. You can look at it when it's total, but so as the shadow moves across the sun, it starts to get a little bit darker, and then sort of like a dusk, like early evening. But it's very strange because when the moon blocks the sun completely, you can see the ring around the sun, and even some people could, with, the right kind of photography equipment, could kind of get the solar flares and things that might be going on at the time. But it goes dark. The birds are kind of like go silent. And it's just very strange. But then when it starts to, it's just a little sliver of sun appears and it's bright again. It's just a little tiny sliver. It's an amazing thing. I mean, the statistics of it, I think, show that God created everything because I believe the moon is 1/400th the size of the sun, but the sun is 400 times further. I mean, the sun is 400 times further away, right, which makes it the perfect size to block out the sun. I mean, that's the amazing thing. So I remember there was an eclipse when I was 5 or 6 years old, but it was just a partial. And so this is, like I said, for most of us, a once in a lifetime experience. And then, of course, there were places in the United States where it was totality earlier this year, and then there were some places in the middle of the United States that had a totality 7 years ago. So there was like an X across the United States, and then there was another total eclipse across the Southwest earlier, in 2023, which, interestingly, the path of totality exited the United States at Corpus Christi at high noon, right, at local time. So it's just, I don't know what to make of all of it. To me, it's just sort of a testament to the fact that God created everything, that it's just perfect to match up.
That's fascinating what you're saying about the moon shape and being absolutely perfect at that right point, blocking out the sun, etc., etc.
It blocks it out completely.
Yeah.
It's just, I want to say weird, strange, amazing. Like I said, it's just something that I honestly never thought I would see it, and then I saw that this was coming, and so we were close. I think if you go 10 miles away from us, you wouldn't have been in the path of totality.
Right.
Right. But even without the totality, in a lot of the United States, it was about 85% blocked by the moon.
But it's interesting, as you say, when the birds stop. I mean, how were other animals reacting in the area as well?
Well, all the street light. We have lights, security lights out around our house that come on at dark, and everything came on. All the street lights and that sort of thing came on in the middle of the afternoon. It was. Wow. It was a very interesting experience, I will say that. And, we know from prophecy that there are signs in the sun, moon, and stars that are going to be even more amazing than that. But I just think the way that the moon is the perfect size to block out the sun at all. And when you consider, I put up a thing about how, the universe is flying through space and the sun and moon and stars are all flying, and then you have this eclipse and you can predict it. It's all very complex.
But that is incredible, isn't it? What a wonderful thing to say, that these planets are moving, these stars are moving, but we've got this eclipse because everything is then in line at the right time. That's an amazing thing to say. I haven't thought about it in those terms.
Yeah,
but you're absolutely right.
I'll have to, if I have it, I'll try to send you a link to it. I know I saved a video. I saw it on Twitter, or X as they call it these days. And it was like everything that's in motion, so the universe is in motion going around the sun is going around the Milky Way. And, I was reading the other day, of course, this is completely off topic. We never talked about talking about this.
Hmm.
The size of the universe in that, in the Milky Way, I don't know what the numbers are. There are hundreds of billions of stars
Right.
just in our galaxy. And then, there was when they had the Hubble telescope a few years ago, they put it on a dark spot, just a little tiny spot in the sky, and they let it absorb the light for a while. And then they started looking at it, and they found it was like it was tens of billions of galaxies in that little photograph.
Wow.
And then all of them have hundreds of billions of stars. And the nearest one is like, it's just the size and scope of the universe is beyond our comprehension. And what does it say in the scriptures? God spoke it into existence. So that's a testimony to the power, strength, and awesomeness of God. But it just, I can remember when the Hubble research came out and people were just completely blown away by what it found. And we didn't even know it was there. That's the thing is, we thought it was an empty part of the sky, and it had hundreds of billions of galaxies.
How do no? It's incredible, John, because I know Tornado Alley. I can appreciate that within the states, and I think Ohio even of course is within that.
Well, actually, it was. I can't remember when the eclipse was. I think the eclipse. I can't remember if it was March or April, but in March, it was either a couple weeks before, or a couple weeks after the eclipse. We had a tornado come through, and it was actually, this is kind of this weird thing because we're watching the television. And here, when you have storms like that, they break in all the local news channels, and they've got radar maps and everything. So they've got this radar map up, and they go, and here's Africa Road here in Galena, Sunbury area. And it's like our house is like right in the middle of the screen.
Oh, wow. Right.
And they're like, this is a very bad place to be. You should take shelter. Well, we have a lower level that's pretty secure. So we came down to the lower level, but and you pray, Lord, please don't let it hit us. And it didn't, but then it hit people that live a half mile south of us, Right. So there's a pretty a very exclusive golf club just a mile away from us, and they lost 1,000 trees.
Wow!
In that storm.
Wow!
And there were other places that the neighborhood was called Cheshire Woods, but it's not much of a woods. There was a stand of woods that they left in it. It looked like a logging camp with all the trees they had to cut down there. Now, I don't know anybody that got hurt. A lot of houses got their roofs ripped off and siding ripped off and that type of thing. Now, you go about 50 miles to the west, that same tornado system pretty much destroyed a lake town and killed about 8 people. So the little historic downtown area there by the lake, just completely flat. So, we've had, you learn to live with these experiences. 12 years ago, we had a thing called a derecho. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I haven't.
So I was in Richmond, Indiana, about 100 miles away. And Pam called me. And she said, there's a bad storm coming. You need to get home. So I pulled it up on my radar and everything. And I saw it coming, and I was sort of read a little bit about it. Mark, I drove, the speed limit is 70. I drove 95 miles an hour across the freeway to get home.
Wow.
And the storm caught me. That's how fast it was coming. And so I had to stop. I have a little Prius, sort of a hybrid electric and gas vehicle, and I get really good gas mileage, but I had to stop and get gas about 20 miles from home. And as I was there, the power went out. No, it wasn't. The power hadn't gone out, but it went pitch black, like blacker than the total eclipse because of the storm coming. And so I was just going over the freeway. I was going to go a state highway home instead of the freeway. And as I was crossing the freeway, the storm hit. So I pulled behind a truck repair place there. And it was for like 25 minutes, it was like a wall of water coming over the side of the building. I got on the side away from where the wind was coming for protection. It was 100-mile-an-hour winds, straight line winds for 25 minutes.
Wow.
And I'll just tell you one more story. So Pam and I had just had our first date about 10 days before, and my grandmother died. So I went to Dayton, Ohio to her funeral, and I left in the afternoon. I'm a college kid. I'm 19. I'm 20 years old. I have my first car, and it doesn't have a radio in it. So I'm driving up through the wilds of up near where we had that conference with Mike Spalding, up in that area. And I've never seen sky like that. It was the largest one-day breakout of tornadoes in U.S. history. And so Dayton is near Xenia. At Xenia, they had a tornado. It's probably the third most powerful tornado in U.S. history. Killed, I think, 50 people. Pretty much destroyed Xenia, Ohio. And I was within less than a mile of a couple tornadoes as I was driving. I was about ready to get out and crawl in a ditch. That's what it was like. So I've been through it. It's frightening. I mean, because we talk about all the stuff that men can do and all this. Listen, when you got something like that, the power of nature compared to the power of man, there's just no comparison.
So it's interesting we're talking about this in many ways. I didn't expect this, but I think this is really important because we have all this. In history there is Krakatoa, right? There are other volcanoes, etc., that have gone off. I think I'm trying to think of whether it's round about 1780, 90. I think in Jamaica or the Caribbean islands, suddenly all this water disappears, come back. In other words, I'm talking about cataclysmic events. And when we go on about, they're going on about climate change. Yes, the climate, I'm not an expert on this, hear me. You've really provoked those thoughts. The climate is changing. It will change, not in the way that they think it is changing, because they keep going on about CO2 and all this, but trees need CO2 to make oxygen. And you raise a brilliant point about, the strength of the weather, strength of God, and man thinking that he can do something about this. No.
So Mark, this is where I sort of differ with some of my friends about, there's a lot of theories around about men controlling the weather, seeding clouds and that type of thing. And there's a whole bunch of theories about it and everything. And I'm I'm pretty skeptical of that. I think because I was a trial lawyer, I have sort of a built-in, I would call it skepticism. People might call it cynicism, but whatever it is, I kind of demand proof. So I play golf with a two-star Air Force general, retired two-star Air Force general. So we talk about these things every now and then. Like, what do you think you flew around? He flew, I think, 140 different aircraft in his Air Force career. Brilliant guy, great pilot. And he's in his 80s now, and he still has like 20/20 vision. He doesn't wear glasses or anything like that. He's just one of these people blessed with that. But there's this. I'm very reluctant to give people power that belongs to God. So when I think of the example of Jesus and the storm on the Sea of Galilee, and it was And what was the reaction of the disciples? What manner of man is this that even the wind and the seas obey him? It was a messianic sign that he was able to control this. And so I'm reluctant to give too much of that to man because I think it diminishes the power of God. That's just my personal take on it. And look, I think people are messing around in areas that we not wanted to. This is, I think, something I wanted to talk about because this is kind of a hot area. I just did a prophecy roundtable with a few guys the other night, a week ago today, on artificial intelligence, technology, and transhumanism. And I was reading an article, I was sharing an article and doing an interview on a radio program tomorrow. And one of the articles I came across was it was from the Financial Times in the UK that I read every day. And they had a big article on Monday about the transformative power of brain implants, chip implants in the brain, was the title of the article. And it's become commonplace. If you give me just a second, I want to pull that up because I want to get the quote right exactly. I'll talk while I'm doing this. But it was in Monday's Financial Times, and they always have one page that's kind of like the teaser page for a lot of information. So let me pull this up.
Because the wonderful thing that what you do, John, is that you read all this stuff. You're reading but this is important, isn't it? You're reading newspapers. We're researching. We're finding out what people are saying and what they're doing. And that's important.
I'm pretty important because I was a lawyer. When you're in a courtroom presenting your case to people, you're not just allowed to you're not supposed to be allowed to just kind of throw something against the wall and hope that it sticks. Of course, we just saw a big trial here in the United States where a lot of that was done. And so things have changed. I was a trial lawyer for 40 some years. I go to trial lawyer training seminars. How can you be a better presenter? How can you present evidence in a more effective way, use graphics and that type of thing. And, and it changed over 40 years. I mean, we didn't have computers when I started practicing law, but you have to present evidence and facts. So I try to source everything. And this is a big deal right now, though. So here's the Financial Times. It should be about what? Financial Times, about the financial things in the world. And the title of the article is The Transformative Potential of Brain Implants. And here's the first sentence, the Financial Times Big Read on Science. That's the category. Radical advances in neurotechnology are helping severely disabled people to walk. Now, that should sound a bit familiar to us. I went to the Christian Media Summit in Israel in December 22, and it was 1 week after ChatGPT 4 had been released by OpenAI. And there was a presenter at the conference. He's a businessman, Jonathan Medved. You can go to the the GPO office, government press office in Israel, and you can probably find this particular talk. I think it's on YouTube. And he was talking about this artificial intelligence, and he's a business guy. We're going to make billions of dollars off of this and all this. And he, by the way, don't say he's a prophet, but he's turning to be right. NVIDIA stock, I just saw the Financial Times a minute ago, said NVIDIA is now more valuable than Apple. It's worth over $3 trillion. It's a chip company that makes chips that they use in artificial intelligence. But what Jonathan Medved said, he goes, understand the context of where I hear this. I'm sitting in a conference room with a bunch of other Christian media types from all over the world in Israel, and he says, this artificial intelligence and chip implants and stuff is going to be amazing. We will make the lame walk. That's exactly what he said.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting there, on the hotel was on Mount Scopus, sort of a continuation of the Mount of Olives, where Jesus walked and taught. And if you remember when John was in prison, he sent his disciples to Jesus, and he said, John sent us here to ask you, are you the one, or should we look for another? And what did Jesus say? You go tell John, the lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear. Those were messianic signs. And so now we live where this artificial intelligence, technology, and stuff is developed to the place where these tech titans, the most valuable companies in the world now, are making, I don't know how else to say it, messianic claims about themselves. Mm-hmm. That ought to be an indication of the time in which we live. And by the way, I think it had a bigger impact on me when I was sitting in Jerusalem, because just a week or so before, Elon Musk's company, Neuralink, had done a big rollout of what they're going to do with brain implants. And the way they presented their presentation was, we're going to make the lame walk, the blind see, and the deaf hear. It was in the exact same order that it had been in when Jesus gave his answer to John the Baptist's disciples. And so I think that's pretty significant and important of what's happening.
I would thoroughly agree with you, and thank you for saying that. And why, John, time doesn't permit me, but there is so many things to talk about.
By the way, you're interviewing the king of the rabbit trails. You probably figured that out already.
I figured that out, but I love it. I love it because, well, the thing is, I think it was Spurgeon says, isn't it? Spurgeon says, have a Bible in one hand, have a newspaper in the other. It's that whole picture of joining that together, where he's saying, well, this is the word of God. What is going on? What is going on in the world? How do we apply this? How do we look at events that are unfolding? And that's what you do. That's what you have just done. And why? Bit of a huge question, because in many ways, the so-called church over here is not paying attention to any of that. Yes, there is a remnant, but which are paying attention to that. How many people in America are paying attention to these things? What percentage do you think are they actually paying attention?
If it's 15%, I would be surprised. A lot of people just want to live their life and not be bothered by these big issues. So 15%, 20%, every now and then they kind of get a clue. I remember one day we were having was during the debate on same-sex marriage in the United States. And we were in a firm meeting, and I stated my opposition to this. And one of my female partners got up and kind of stormed out of the room. And she came to me later and she said, I have gay friends, I think it's the term she used. And, I want to care for them and help them. And I'm a Christian, And I'm like, okay, now, by the way, I know where she went to church. So there's a big conference coming up here in Columbus, the last weekend of June. Because here in America, June is Pride Month.
Same here.
So the whole month, we're just inundated with rainbow flags and this event and this parade with naked guys on bikes. And people, like, one of the biggest ones in the world is here in Columbus, Ohio. Stonewall, it's called Stonewall Columbus. They have 500 to 700,000 people attend this parade. And I think I don't know if it's occurred yet or not. I don't pay attention. I certainly don't go down there in that area, but I watch the videos that people post. Mark, the whole crowd is filled with little children and guys, and I don't want to be crude, but one of the parade units that marches in the parade is dykes on bikes, as they call themselves. and they're children here watching this. So here in Columbus, the church where my former partner attended, and I really liked her. She's a great person, but is a liberal Christian church. It's the Vineyard Columbus. It's one of the largest vineyard churches, the ones that were started by John Wimber. And the pastor used to be probably considered the John Wimber, the founder of Vineyard, considered the pastor here to be his protege. And I've been over there, Mark. I went over there one night because I always want to make sure I get the story straight. They had Richard Foster. Richard Foster is one of the worst people in Christian theology. Christianity.
What's the infamous book he wrote? I've just forgotten.
Now that you say it,
it was a green book with gold letters. I think I can just picture it now.
It's let me look it up because I want to make sure I get it, because I wrote a whole big paper on it when it was called The Celebration of Discipline.
That's it. Yeah.
And by the way, in that book, I think it was in Celebration of Discipline. It might have been one of his other, like Streams of Living Water and some others. He wrote a book on, mysticism, prayer. And what he said in one of those books was, by the way, we need to, when you do this, you will enter into altered states of consciousness. And so if you're going to engage in this type of prayer, you need to pray prayers of protection for yourself. Now, wait a minute. We're in the scripture when Jesus said, teach us to pray. It was okay. Well, now when you pray, you need to pray a prayer of protection because you might encounter some demonic entities. Now, wait a minute. So if you're telling people to do that, then you're probably off. And you think, so over at the Vineyard here in Columbus, this is probably 10 years ago, they had an evening and they had 3,000 people there to hear Richard Foster. And Richard Foster came in and said, I've known your pastor for over a decade. And this pastor would bring in people like Jim Wallace from Sojourners, a radical Marxist, Leninist, leftist. Okay. He would bring this guy in to speak. So this in a 3 weeks, well, the last weekend in June, they are having the now I'm going to forget the number of it, the name of it. It's like Revive 24 or something like that. Revoice 24. It's a conference. It was started by a guy named Nate Collins. Nate was a professor at the Southern Evangelical Seminary, the president of which may still be Albert Mohler. And he left, but he started this thing called Revoice to give voice to people who are in the LGBTQ community. So it's a very affirming conference. And they always have a statement of faith that kind of leads people to believe that, oh, well, you're all for traditional marriage and that type of thing. So that conference is going to take place just down the road from here, from where I live, 10 miles away. And it's a church that brings in 10,000 people every Sunday, every weekend. It may be the largest vineyard church in the world. There's another large one down in Cincinnati. Same thing. And so these people are off. Okay. So this is the apostasy. So I did a talk in England it was either Canada. I think I've used the title a number of times, and I only bring it up because some of my prophecy teacher friends had put up a video yesterday, and I'm going to take credit for the title because I just seen the movie Silence of the Lambs, the one with Jodie Foster and the guy from England. I can't.
Our Welsh actor that I'm embarrassed. I can't think of his name but I'll think of it in a minute.
Anthony.
Hopkins. Anthony
Hopkins. And one of maybe the greatest actor of our lifetime. and it's a phenomenal movie if you get past, because it's crude. Let's admit that. But I was thinking about this because I was doing a talk. I think it was for Moriel, and it was on spiritual formation and mysticism coming into the church. And so my friends, they were using it to say, well, people don't talk about Bible prophecy in the church. So the title of it was The Silence of the Shepherds. So I thought it was kind of a clever take, the silence of the lambs, the silence of the shepherds. And I actually used a shepherd in silhouette and put a wolf head on it in silhouette, because I think, I don't know if it was from Spurgeon or somebody, I kind of got the idea that this, a wolf in sheep's clothing that they talk about.
It sounds like the Fabian logo.
Yeah, but a lot of times it's like a sheep with a wolf head on it.
Mm.
But I actually think it's a little bit deeper than that, because who would wear sheep's clothing made out of stuff from a sheep, but a shepherd of the sheep? And so what you have is a wolf masquerading as a shepherd, the one who's to protect the flock. It's a false shepherd. So that's sort of my take on that teaching. So that I called it Silence of the Shepherds. And I think we see this happening much. So you had asked me a question earlier about how many people talk about Bible prophecy and signs and that type of thing. Certainly there's a silence of the shepherds. It is the thing I hear the most from people who watch our YouTube channel, who are concerned that they don't see this. They don't see people talking about this stuff, about Bible prophecy, about these political life issues that are happening. And so when we had in the United States the same-sex marriage decision back in 2015. It's hard to believe it's been that long ago, approving same-sex marriage. And then Obama came out and said, well, we just need to educate the people who oppose this. We need to bring them along into modernity. And now look where we are with this whole, and I know they're in the UK. I read the Times of London too. That I like the Times of London. And there's a current controversy. They're going after J.K. Rowling, and I'm no fan of hers, but she has stood up for women, saying a woman is a woman, and they're coming after her to completely destroy her. Absolutely. And now we can't even decide whether it's a man or a woman. It's insanity.
It is insanity. And we had you had Obama, and then we had David Cameron, previous Prime Minister, who gave us the referendum to leave the EU, and is now back as our Foreign Secretary, which I'm still raging about, even though now we're in an election, so he won't be.
Well, I'm curious what do you think is going to happen in Europe? I was just writing to somebody about this morning. These elections are happening all over the world this year.
Yeah, they're absolutely right. A lot of elections.
Russia had one. The EU's going through one. You're going through one. We're maybe going to go through one. I'm not sure it's going to happen. And then I'm interviewing a guy from Mexico next week, Francisco Gil White, sort of a historian. I think he calls himself an evolutionary anthropologist. He's a professor. He's a very, very intelligent guy. But he's from Mexico. Now, I want to ask him about Mexico, because Mexico just elected a radical leftist, atheistic, Leninist, Marxist, Jewish lady as their president.
Yep. Well, she may not be there for long. She may be having to make her way back to Israel, but we may not have time to discuss that.
Well, her parents, I think her parents had immigrated there from Europe after World War II. And she may be leaving, but I saw an interview with her. She's very much, her parents were atheists, didn't believe in God, and she's a little bit fuzzier on the issue, but doesn't appear she has much of a belief of any kind.
But
in God.
Were you asking me what do I think is going to happen over here?
Yeah, what do you? I mean, I know they're talking about, I don't know, labor, and I hear the name Jeremy Corbyn, which just kind of gives me the shivers. And
it's interesting. Just to say, Jeremy Corbyn is not leader of the Labour Party, but you're absolutely right. It gives me the shivers, especially as he doesn't seem to like Israel one iota.
Well, but who's this one guy that they have? Is it like Galloway?
Oh yeah, George Galloway. He won the seat in Rochdale. George Galloway has also spoken at your Congress in regard to the Iraq War. Look that up. I'll send you the link. There's a very interesting speech that he gave there. He has stood, I think, 9 times that George has stood in various seats. He is a formidable, I have to hand this to you. He's a formidable orator. However, he doesn't like Israel. There was
You're pretty kind in saying that. He absolutely loathes Israel.
Absolutely. And there was an infamous situation where the wonderful Elon Levy, who was the Israeli government spokesman and now is doing a number of different shows in Israel, State of the Nation 1. And Elon went to debate with George, Gorgeous George, as people call him over here, and he went to debate with him. And Elon stood up and said, Israeli, I think something like this, Jewish. And George Galloway said, "Oh, are you an Israeli citizen?" He said, "Yes, I don't debate Israeli citizens." And he walked out. So you're absolutely right. And the thing is, and we've got about 15 minutes we'll discuss this, because you and I both know, and Genesis 12 verse 3, this is real. If you bless my people, I will bless you. If you curse my people, I will curse you. And at the moment, every country is being held to account by Almighty God in the way that it is treating Israel and standing with the Jewish people. Now, we are not doing over brilliantly in the UK. And if I may politely say that the Biden administration is not doing particularly well on your side of the pond either. Biden deliberately, because as you said, if Biden got in, then Obama would then have his 4th term. And then he can have to buy a new earpiece and stuff it in someone else's ear. I'll just say that. And he has said that on record, of course, has he? Sure. That would thrill him. But the Labour Party, the Corbyn, Keir Starmer, who's actually the leader of the Labour Party, his wife is Jewish. The future, if they win, it's not necessarily certain that they're going to win, and I will just maybe try and explain why. The future potentially Chancellor of the Exchequer, she is a Jewish lady as well. You've got that. But you've got this purging. Starmer reckons he's purged the left to get rid of the anti-Semitism and all that. And I'm sorry, but I believe it's still there. So the Conservatives are not conservative, John. They couldn't conserve anything except, whatever benefits them financially. So don't be fooled by that word. It's always interesting when we over here use the conservative word with yourselves in America as the conservative world. And also you have in the public square, you are far more open with your faith, with the Christian faith in the public square than we are. We are, it's the last thing that the politicians want. They want Christianity. They want Jesus pushed out. Supposedly, according to all the pundits and all the rest, the Conservatives will lose by an absolute landslide. They might be left with 100 seats if they're lucky, 80 seats. and the Labour Party would have the rest, with a few other smatterings of the Liberal. But there is an interesting situation where you've got Reform UK Party, which is now led by Nigel Farage, and Nigel Farage as the head, as a sort of figurehead for 20 odd years in the European Parliament. We went through UKIP. We went through. He then told the Brexit Party to stand down, and of course, as you know, in June the 23rd, 17,410,752 people, with a majority of over 1 million, voted out to leave the construct of the European Union, which is a leg of global governance, in my opinion. And another day we can go down all these rabbit holes. So everything is to play for, frankly, and we have got church full of wokeism, left wing. We've got this total left wing ideology of collectivism within our society, and the big debate that's going on is that, when we need to be wealth creators again as a nation instead of wealth distributors. But under the Conservatives, there has been the highest tax for years and all this kind of thing. And of course, going through the pandemic and running up bills of 405 billion pound, and someone in the Treasury, and I've forgotten the gentleman's name, thinking, oh well, we can inflate our way out of this, and then suddenly interest rates go up and a little bit. That's affected that. It's complete and utter chaos. We are up to our eyes in debt. However, in many ways, the Labour Party should win, right? And they will win because in many ways people will not go out and vote. The disaffection in this country is huge. The Conservatives have been in power for 14 years. They are not Conservatives. In a tradition, you could say that they are what people call wets. Margaret Thatcher said that, got my wet. They're left wing. Ted Heath, the previous prime minister who took us into the EU, are wet. So we've got that. But John, we are in such serious trouble, and the comments from David Cameron, who is Lord Cameron, coming back and then wanting a two-state solution in Israel. We haven't had time to discuss that, and we've got to, but another time, has just been abominable. And also, this is the man that, when you talk about Obama, I just remind, again, I just say, he said, people have got to get with the program, and it's like saying the Church of England's got to get with the program. So it's all of that is going on, and we need to be praying for your nation. We need to be praying for my nation immensely. But people, and I'm doing a lot of interviews. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk about this, but great, we'll talk about that just briefly. But the Reform UK, I'm at the moment having the privilege to interview a number of these candidates, and they are people in Main Street, England, Britain, UK, who are then standing. They're standing for the election, and they're people that are standing, that they are in the from all walks of life, and they're stepping forward to be Reform UK candidates, and absolutely incredible people. And a number of these people are Christians. I'm having the privilege to even say I want to pray for you before these interviews and stuff. Is amazing, and no one turns you down. People realize they've got to stand up, but I don't know. And I agree with you totally. I do believe that we're in the last days. When I'm having this conversation with these people, I'm saying this is the lens that I see through, and and scripturally as a Bible believing Christian. And John, what excites me, and it sort of follows on in a bit with what you were saying about Columbus, Ohio, is that a number of these people don't go to church. One or two do. But there is a spiritual walk going on. They are searching. And because people want direction. And I don't have to tell you, you know, and a dear friend of mine was saying this last night in America, that once we push God out of everything, there's a vacuum. There is a vacuum. And people of a certain age know, because they know the previous history and where the nation was. So they are actually turning back to that history. We just had a march on last Saturday in London, where there were thousands of patriots on the streets, holding England flags, Scottish flags, Welsh flags. And it was a video of lawfare that were being made by Tommy Robinson, and showing that, and showing the lawfare, etc., that have been going on, and grooming gangs and all this. But people were on the street, you know, to defend their country. John, I do apologize because it's time, and I think, do you know what? And I'm
the
very,
surface.
we've only just scratched the surface. I'm just going to put my glasses on because I just want to check the time. I'm just saying that we've got a few minutes, but thank you for asking me that. It's great dialogue. Thank you for asking me that question, because the parallels
feel
are
like
immense.
I'm living in this chaotic world, you know, like I was reading all the, you know, India is a big country. Modi's going to win in a landslide. He didn't.
No.
He just barely hung on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of I think a harbinger. I don't have. I mean, somebody asked me, "Well, sure, Trump's going to win in the United States." I don't know.
No.
I mean, he's got a hearing coming up on July 11th. I believe he will be sentenced to serve time in prison.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And the other thing is, I just interviewed and caught up with my friend Kevin Shipp, the CIA whistleblower, and